Well, hey there, everybody. This is Snackbox coming to you from a beautiful day down here in Basement Studio. Really excited to be here today talking with you all. It's been a little while, so if you're new to the channel, let me let you know a little bit about me. I am Snackbox. I have hiked the Colorado Trail most of the segments 3 times, but all of them at least twice. Really love this trail. It's meant the world to me. It's really changed my life. And I'm here today talking to you about this guy here. This is the Colorado Trail Databook. This is just an incredible resource for those of you planning a hike or those of you heading out on the hike. You can tell here that I've carried this bad boy on no fewer than a dozen hikes in different areas of the Colorado Trail. And this is an older edition. They have an 8th edition now that's even better. But we're going to talk about 6 different reasons that you should get this data book, even if you plan on getting that Far Out app, which I would recommend as well. But this thing is essential to get right away, help you with your planning, and it will really help you when you get out there on the trail. So we got a lot to cover, everybody. Not a lot of time. Let's get to it. All right, everybody, so here's the deal. We're going to talk a lot today about this guy here. It's the Databook. Well, before we begin, I also want to mention to you all that throughout the course of this video, I'm going to show you some still shots of the Colorado Trail Databook, but I want you to know that I get all of these from the Colorado Trail Foundation website. So I'm not giving away any information that you couldn't get on your own. The other thing that I want to let you know here is that there will be a link at the bottom. I'm not sponsored by the CTF. I'm just a really big supporter of theirs, and I really love the work that they do. So I'm going to encourage you to go to their website and buy this book. Pay the $14.95 if you're able, because then that money goes to maintaining and taking care of this beautiful trail that anybody who's hiked it loves, and all of you watching this will love at some point in the very near future. You should also know that the data book is different than the guidebook. The guidebook is a big spiral bound number that's going to have a lot more information, a lot more about the towns, a lot more about the different resupplies. So if you can afford both, then the guidebook is great for planning and the data book is good for taking on the trip with you. It's not terribly heavy, and it's really it's just so good. For many of you out there, you're probably thinking, I have the app, I've got Far Out, I've got a number of different resources that'll fit right on my phone, and you're probably just going to tell me that my phone could end up getting wet or broken, or the battery dies or something of the sort. And actually, I'm going to leave all of those reasons out of this discussion. Instead, what I want to tell you is not why you should avoid the app, because I think you should take the app with you. If you have that kind of resource with you, why wouldn't you take it with you? The reason you want the data book, or the reasons you want the data book, are very different and distinct. And so I'm going to tell you some of the things that the data book offers that you can really and truly only get from the data book. So let's dive right into it. And the first thing here that you need to know is that the data book is really great for showing you town amenities. And so when you're looking at the data book, you can see what each town that you pass might have in it. So as you're planning your 0 days or your Nero days or resupplies, this is really helpful because it'll tell you if a town has lodging, for example, or if it has a grocery store, if it has a post office. It will tell you all of this information that you could spend a lot of time really diving into Google and trying to figure this out, or asking people on the Facebook group. So it'll set a baseline of sort of availability so that you can see what each town has. And then when you're making decisions about where you want to stop and where you want to continue, the data book is really useful for that, because what it opens up for you is that opportunity to ask people that next level of question. So where most people will be on the Facebook group or other groups trying to figure out exactly what amenities are available in each town, you're going to be able to ask questions like, which is the cooler town, Breckenridge or Frisco? Because you have the data book, you know they both have the same amount of amenities and they're both easily accessible from the bus station. So this will really help you to understand what's available in every single town. So the next thing that you're going to want is the availability of water as you go throughout the hike, especially early season. This one is really important because when you look at this, the data book has this sort of really cool system of showing you a glass of water, and the more full it is, the more likely the water will be running. And so as you're trying to figure out some of those stretches early season, then you can look to the data book and figure out the likelihood that the water is still running and you're going to have that water. That comes into play quite a bit in the different segments of the trail where you will go, say, 10 miles in segment 2, or later on down the trail when you get to segments 26 and 27, when there's about a 23-mile potential water carry. And so you won't necessarily see that if you're just using Far Out. Now, Far Out, that app is terrific, especially you'll notice here that I mentioned that this is really great for early season, and Far Out really works nicely for pairing with this when you get to some of those other places where you'll see maybe a glass that's almost empty or with the exclamation point. And what that means is there's a very high likelihood that later in the season, when the snow runs off, that water won't be flowing, so you can't necessarily count on it. So if you pair the data book with that Far Out app, especially later in the season after people have hiked and left their messages about whether the water is available. They can work really nicely in tandem together. So again, this is not me telling you don't buy Far Out, buy the Databook instead. This is me saying get both of them, and if you're only going to get one, I still think it should be this. Let's talk about the next idea here, which are the road crossings and distance to town. This is really great, and it's one of the things that the Databook offers really nicely. And even more than that, if you pay specific attention to the legend and pay attention to what types of highways you'll be crossing, then that will tell you whether or not the road is paved or dirt road. That's really important for those of you who are comfortable hitching into town, because you're going to want to try to do that from a paved road because there will be far more traffic, or you'll want to do it from roads where there's maybe a dirt road, but there's some sort of a draw for people. So for example, when you get to the area near Cottonwood Creek, you'll know that this is a place where there's a lot of camping, and the map can kind of help you figure that out. And so you'll know that there are likely going to be people coming and going, or if there's maybe a path to a trailhead, maybe if the road goes up to a trailhead, you know, later in the afternoon, people will be leaving that trail and going, and they're hikers, and they're more likely to pick you up for a hitch. But having the Databook there with that visual of the different roads is absolutely super helpful for you as you're starting to figure out on trail where you can hop off and where it might be easier to catch a hitch than other places that might be a little more difficult. So the Databook is really helpful in a way that you won't necessarily find on the apps as easily or at all. The other thing that I want to mention here are that these wilderness areas are very clearly marked in the Databook, and wilderness areas are a very different kind of space. You might be thinking, well, it's all wilderness, I'm camping, aren't I? And what we're actually talking about at this point is not necessarily that you're in the woods. We're talking about a specific designation of land called a wilderness area that was made possible by the Wilderness Act of 1964, where this is a space where effectively nothing with wheels or machinery or gas powered can go. So what that will tell you is that those are often terrific places for camping and getting a really quiet night of sleep, because you won't have cars or dirt bikes coming through, and you certainly won't have mountain bikes to worry about when you're in that area, because those mountain bikes, say in segment 3, can be really scary if you turn a corner and there's somebody barreling down a hill really quickly at you. So the wilderness areas are really terrific to know when they're coming up, because if you're trying to make a decision about continuing forward or stopping, it's great to know if you keep going, will you get to a wilderness area, because that's great camping, or will you maybe stay because you're already in a wilderness area? And that's something that's really nicely defined in the Databook there. The last thing that I'll say here is that the Databook is terrific for planning those side trips. So a lot of those side trips up the 14ers, specifically like San Luis Peak, or maybe earlier in the trail in the collegiates, you'll see a lot of the side trails. So it will tell you exactly where you stop for the side trails, how far you turn, and how far it is up that trail. So that's really helpful, because a lot of times when you download the app for Far Out or the other apps, those other services, it's either harder to figure out exactly where those side trails are, or it doesn't even include that. So you still have to sort of figure out how far, kind of gauge whether or not you're going to be able to make that climb early enough in the morning, that kind of thing. So I really love having those side trips up 14ers marked in the Databook, because you can make a lot of really good decisions about where you're going. Same holds true for things like lakes. If you want to camp near a lake or a river, then it's much easier to figure out how big that's going to be. If it's going to be a big lake, say a turquoise lake, or if it's going to be a smaller lake like a cataract lakes or some of those creeks. So the Databook is just so helpful for catching that visual of the bird's eye view, which I know you can get on some of the apps, but I will say that here it's just so much easier. The last thing that I'll say here is that the elevation charts are absolutely super helpful for planning your trip early in the morning. The elevation charts are just so helpful for figuring out what's ahead of you for the day, so you can get a real sense. Is this going to be a really hard day with a lot of up and down? Is this going to be a hard day early in the morning with some up and then a little bit of down and a little bit of smooth? Is it going to be a really easy day early and then I need to make sure I'm up over the pass by a certain time? So just having that visual at the bottom of each page can be super helpful for getting a sort of vibe for what that day is going to be like. So I really love these elevation charts, and it is true that this is absolutely available when you look at the apps. You can certainly stretch out and take a look at the different climbs that you have, and you can figure out with laser precision how far up the climb you are. But I really love having that visual already there, ready to go, and you kind of take a peek at where you are and get a feel for where you need to go or what you need to be aware of. It's also great because you can really get a sense of where tree line is, which generally speaking is about 11,700 feet. You can see it behind me here. This is in segment 10 of the Colorado Trail. and you get a sense of, right about here is 11:7. But when you're looking at the data book, you get a good sense of when you're going to pop up over tree line, which becomes really critically important when you get later on down the trail in the collegiate west. If you decide to go west, which you should, if you decide to go west, or if you go on through the San Juans, both of those areas have a fair bit of exposure. That's nothing to worry about as long as you're aware of what's coming down the pike. But having the data book is really helpful because of those elevation charts at the bottom will help you figure out when you're going to pop up and how long you'll need to stay there before you can dip down below tree line. So the other thing is kind of related here to those road crossings that I mentioned a little while ago, but here, same thing is true if we're thinking about those lightning strikes and how to make sure that we're safe. The data book will show you the side trails that split off from the Colorado Trail, which is super helpful if you're trying to figure out how to get down below tree line in some of those segments where, there's that segment right before Elk Creek Basin, and you are going to be up above tree line for about 32 miles, give or take. And so you might be a little nervous about that, but if you have the data book, there's no reason to be nervous because you'll see every single side trail and all of those will take you down the mountain and you'll be able to hop down under tree line should you end up in a situation where you're up there and you start seeing some storms roll through. So again, nothing to be worried about, but the data book is really, really helpful for you in that regard. Now, the last thing that I want to say here is that even outside of all the utility of it, I will mention this again, that it will support this Colorado Trail Foundation. For those of you new to the CT, or maybe you've never set foot on the Colorado Trail and you're still trying to figure out exactly what it's like, let me tell you that it is the most incredible trail I've ever hiked, and I've done a lot of hiking in my day. And this one is the most community oriented. It's the best cared for. It's the best the foundation that's tied to it is absolutely phenomenal. They do just such a terrific job. And the people who are on the trail all love the trail. It's just absolutely phenomenal. You're going to love it. So let's try to do our best. If you're able financially to support the CTF by buying a data book, I would encourage you to do so. And go ahead and pick up a couple of little tchotchkes there. They've got lots of cool stuff on the website that can get you excited about the trip. And that's what this is all about. Right now, it's November. It's still 6 months, 7 months away from when you could even possibly launch on the CT. So this is a great time to start thinking of the ways you can get excited. And if you can get excited about the trail through a Colorado Trail data book, then do it. And it's a great idea to go ahead and ask Santa for one of these, because then you can start planning that trip while you're stuck in your house eating a bunch of chili and drinking some hot apple cider because it's too cold outside right now to do much of anything else. Well, everybody, I think that about covers it. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. And remember, feel free to hit me up on Instagram at Backcountry Champion. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer those as you start your planning process. I'm also happy to send you a sticker in the mail. So if you hit me up on Instagram, say, hey, Snackbox, hit me up with one of those Outside Comfort Zone stickers. I'll be happy to put one in the mail to you for free, just as a way of saying thank you for being part of this community. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. Stay warm. Take care, everybody. This Snackbox out.